What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Healing in Hindsight. My name's Taylor. Hopefully you know that by now. Hope you guys are having a good week, good day, heading into the weekend soon. Wonder what I'm going to do this weekend. I don't know. Keeping it super casual today, actually. So just fair warning, I have put the doggies up. I have two dogs, and they are not happy that they're not allowed to be in the room while I'm talking to you guys. So if you hear little high-pitched squeals here and there, that's my one and two upset that they can't be right next to me. But they're pretty loud when they hear something and start barking or whatever. So wanted to try to keep that out of there, but not going to sweat it too hard. Anyways, so we're at update number 3. Before we really just jump into the major content of the season, I'm really excited to be able to really share something valuable with you guys. I have some amazing guests that you guys are going to be hearing from, and I'm continuing to take guest requests. So if you are interested in being on the show, sharing your story, you don't have to have some type of fancy background. If you're a diabetic and you just want to share how you have been championing, living and being your best version of yourself while having diabetes, I want to hear from you. Anyways, so what you can expect in this episode, I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. I say that, but y'all know I ramble sometimes. So I'm going to try to keep it short, but I really just want to talk about what to expect now moving forward as we're getting ready to jump into the season really deeply. Things that I'm doing and why I kind of changed a little bit of the direction of the show compared to season 1. I'm sure as you've noticed, there isn't a vocal intro because I am creating a brand new one, but I'll talk more about that in a second. So with that, let's get started.
Perfect.
So, what's happening? So, the last episode I talked about navigating the wellness space, as a woman of color, and why I feel so strongly about continuing to push to be the representation, especially in the diabetic space. And I'm happy to say that, I'm discovering more and more, not only people of color, but specifically women of color who have really decided to take on being an example, and sharing their stories for other diabetics, because it's hard, it's hard coming into this diagnosis and you don't always have an immediate friend or family member who you can share those experiences with and have somebody to kind of help you kind of problem solve navigating your life with this new, this new illness, if you will. So I want to be, that warm, welcoming friend that can just be like, hey, I get it. And, let it out, vent, whatever you need to do. And, let's put our heads together and game plan on how you can move forward and still enjoy life to the fullest, because it's not an end all be all. The world isn't over because of this. And I have to be honest. I feel like Mila over at The Hangry Woman says it best, where she's glad. Essentially, she's saying she's grateful for her diagnosis because she never would have really paid attention to her health had it not come up. And I know that sometimes it's hard to think that way, but, over the years, I've slowly began to feel the same way. And yeah, it sucks, and especially for those who have type 1 who didn't really have a choice. You know what I mean? It's still something that I feel like is worth appreciating in a way because, one, I am a firm believer that you don't ever come up against challenges that you can't face or that aren't meant for you to be able to overcome. But even more so, there's a lot of truth to that, in that sometimes we get so heads down and sometimes we do take advantage of, the grace and space that the divine is giving us, to the point where it's when it's too late, sometimes that we like, oh shit, I should probably be grateful and be thankful that I can eat whatever and it doesn't affect me, that kind of thing. So for me, I never would have really looked at my health with a fine tooth comb the way that I am had it not been for my diagnosis. And the fact that I can still live and enjoy my life the way, that I used to, but just at a different pace and angle. That's all that really matters to me. I haven't lost any limbs. For the most part, my body functions as it's supposed to. I have to give it some help, with some medication and the way that I eat. But that wasn't something I was thinking about, at 19, 20, you know what I mean? And being so conscious of what I put in my body, is honestly, I feel like really saving me, being in my 30s now. I think it's just going to make getting, to 31, 32 and so on, even more meaningful because I'm going to be ensuring that those years are of the best versions of myself. So, that's really something that I wanted to share and kind of just like tune into a little bit more with this season. So, the season, or really Healing in Hindsight as a whole, is no longer just going to be focused solely on type 2 diabetics. That is my perspective. That is what I'm dealing with. But when I really sat back and thought about it in the off season, there are so many more stories and perspectives that bring value to diabetes as a whole that I feel like should be heard just as much as myself as a type 2 diabetic. So I want this show, I want the brand in and of itself to be a resource for diabetes. I want it to be something that, people of color can listen to and understand. I want it to be something that, millennials can listen to and recognize that, like, oh my God, there's somebody there who understands what it's like to live by yourself and have a full-time job and try to climb the corporate ladder and have a social life and want to travel and see the world, versus waiting until I'm in my, 50s or 60s to do that. But still navigate having, this illness in a positive way and in a way where I'm able to manage it without having to lean on medication too heavily. So that's really why I want to shift the focus on this. Healing in Hindsight is really meant to be a reflection of what I've learned in those first couple of years of just not really taking this diagnosis seriously and recognizing areas where I could have improved. And for those out there who are just coming into this, hopefully that you listen and understand that, like, you don't have to make those same mistakes that I did. But know that, if you make a mistake, it's okay. You can always pick yourself back up. I'm a perfect example of that, right? So I'm giving the brand a refresh. Nothing super major, like, my if we get like super designer nitty gritty, if you will, my logo's not changing. My colors aren't changing. But it's more so the mission and the values and the content that I'm shifting. That's what you're really going to start to see is it's not just about type 2 diabetics. I think, those who are diabetic in general, no matter what, we all have a strong role to play in how our healthcare system takes care of us. You know what I mean? Especially for those who have to take insulin. Like, insulin isn't just for type 1 diabetics. You know what I mean? Like, you can be a type 2 diabetic and be on insulin. And it's one of the most expensive liquids in the world. And it's ridiculous that it is. And so, if I sit back and say, oh, I'm a type 2 diabetic and all I do is take medication, I don't need to worry about the cost of insulin, not my problem. Wrong. And I feel like it is a little bit of my responsibility to advocate, for my other diabetic brothers and sisters who may not have the luxury, or not even a luxury. I don't want to make it seem like taking insulin is a bad thing, or that, I've heard of people being threatened to be put on insulin like it's something to feel bad about. It is a hormone that your body produces, and sometimes that someone's body doesn't produce it as well. We do it with birth control all the time. We do it with testosterone all the time. So there's nothing to be ashamed of taking insulin. But it also shouldn't cost you so much, especially when some of us need it literally to live. You know what I mean? So I think for those of us who, whether or not we're on insulin or not, we all should be advocates to ensure that we have the medication that we need and that it's not costing so much in order to have it, because, you can die from this. And so I can, I definitely have been in a position where I've had to, you know how like you check out at the grocery store and you got too much stuff and you're like, ooh, actually put that back. Actually put that back. Or like your card declined and you weren't sure why, or you left your wallet at home and you have to like leave everything there. And like, that's embarrassing, right? But to do that with medication that you need, and I've been told stories of like people having to walk away from the pharmacy and just being like, you know what, just leave it because they couldn't afford it. And that's not acceptable. And so it's going to take a collection of all of us to advocate and to share our knowledge and to support each other so that this isn't something that becomes a trend. We see it in TV shows all the time, this kind of dystopian like societies where, if you weren't higher upper middle class or whatever status or whatever funds or born into whatever family, you couldn't get the necessities. And I find television so interesting because in a way it's foreshadowing where we could be if we don't stand together and ensure that, our government systems and, the medical and pharmaceutical industries really listen to us and take us seriously, that we need affordable options. So I really just want to ensure that the Healing in Hindsight brand is open and inclusive for all diabetics, no matter what. And so that's what you're really going to hear this season is you're going to hear voices of people with type 1, people with type 2, pre-diabetics, people who may have had diabetes, but they've, sent it into remission of some sort, like they're not on medication and, maybe they self-manage, but when they check into the doctor, the doctor's like, it's not necessary for you to like check your numbers anymore, things like that, just because they've gotten their machine so well oiled that it's not even something they have to even think about. And that's my aim. You know what I mean? I want to get to a point where medication is no longer something I need to be concerned about. The way that I'm eating, the way that I'm living, the way that I am supporting my body just kind of resets and goes back to, those before times, if you will. So that's what I'm really hoping to do. So what that looks like, and some of you, I don't think anybody's really paying attention to my Instagram that hard, to be quite honest with you. But, if you look over time, my Instagram it's just an example, has changed so much since it started. I launched Healing in Hindsight officially when it was just a website, blog or whatever, on August 31st. And it's really interesting because, I do have Healing in Hindsight as an LLC. So I am truly a business owner, and it became official on August 31st of this year. And so technically Healing in Hindsight is 4 years old, but I guess now it's back to being a baby again since it's legally official, if you will. But I just find that so interesting to look back and see how it's evolved. And, I used to think about archiving those posts so that way nobody could see, the weird changes or, the posts and all the things like that. But I chose to keep it up as a reminder to myself of how far I've come and how much my brand has evolved. And I'm proud of that. I feel like if you're not able to evolve and pivot and shift into something else, then what's it all for? And you see that with people getting, in the kind of the professional space of like, oh yeah, they were, this corporate executive for 20 something odd years. And then suddenly they dropped everything and opened up a coffee shop and they couldn't be happier. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you should be able to do that. That should be okay. There shouldn't be this expectation that once you've chosen your primary function, if you will, that's all that you ever have to do. I've never been that person. And my parents could probably tell you, I've always wanted to stick my hand in everything, and my mom used to say like, okay, well, why don't you stick with this so you can get a scholarship for college? And then my dad was like, oh, well, you're only doing it just because you want to be social, not necessarily because you like the craft. And, honestly, they were both wrong. Like, I didn't care about doing it for school purposes. Now, to a degree, I understand where my mom was coming from, especially because, her coming from another country and coming here and, growing up in, still a very rocky racial climate, in Louisiana, like, I could understand, my grandparents didn't have the room to pay for my mom to do extracurriculars and things like that. She could only do stuff that was free and that she could, get to without any additional help. And college was just not really a factor for her, And, for my dad, it's more of like, if you want to do something social, cool, but just be honest about it, And it's not to say that I don't think he was right in a way. I think he just took that as the only reason why I wanted to do those things. Now, I could be wrong, but for the most part, I truly did want to try all those things. And I didn't fully understand that, yes, it costs money and all these things like that. But when I look at myself now, like, I've gained skills through being able to try all of those things. You know what I mean? And I have an appreciation for a lot of things because I was able to try all these things. I did sports, I did dance, I did theater, I did band, even in my adult life, I did a coding kind of semi boot camp, if you will. I did, I got back into art and painting. I got into, business masterminds, all of these things because I don't feel like I have to take no for an answer to be able to try things. I don't. You know what I mean? And even sometimes when people are like, it's a career shift, like, okay, I don't see what's wrong with that. I think we've grown to attach to this idea of you just need to work and work and work, and you need to, become a master of one thing. Now, don't get me wrong. My dad once told me they don't pay the player who can do everything a crap ton of money. They pay the player who has a specialization the most money. If you're a really great pitcher in baseball or whatever, they're paying you way more money than somebody who can pitch, who can bat, who can, be in the outfield and all that stuff like that. So it's not that I don't understand mastering something. And I feel like I've kind of found my happy middle of mastery, which is, connecting and teaching people and developing people. And I wouldn't say I'm a master right now, but like when people talk to me, that's what I say, like I'm a trainer, even though my role right now isn't a trainer, like I'm a trainer. And I recently have started being open to saying a teacher because I felt like that was such a heavy title. Like I'm not an educator, I'm not teaching kids, how to navigate in the world like we do that, because that's, to me, I feel like the word teacher is such a title to hold in high regard. And there's a little bit of imposter syndrome there. A trainer to me is slightly different. It's like, you already know how to navigate the world. I'm just here to show you how to navigate this specific area. You know what I mean? But, I'm making myself open to teacher because I understand it can expand across many forms and mediums. But that is what I'm good at. I can get up in front of people. I can synthesize down information and share it and it be palatable. And I know how to tailor it to an individual and to make people feel good about what they're learning. And even when things are challenging, I know how to help people get through those challenges. I've just never applied it to anything that I've been doing personally. And so that's something that I'm wanting to do now, and I'm excited to kind of break out into that because I'm used to teaching content that some other company has had, so it is something that I'm looking forward to. And I want you guys to be a part of that journey, whether it's, whatever I provide in value and education through the show, or I'm looking into creating my own group coaching program. And I know everybody's got something out there. Everybody's got a coaching service or a teaching service or membership or whatever. But I think there is true value in the amount of people who want to share what they know and what they've learned. Because all we're doing is a modern form of what villages used to do. Especially before writing became so heavy. Um, Villages and cultures would pass down their knowledge through people. They would pick an apprentice or, a couple of people, and they would literally through word of mouth teach them everything. And they just kept passing it on, kept passing it on. Same thing with trades, and skill set. And so I don't see that as any different. We just have the ability to consume it in so many different forms. So my hope is to be able to work with people a lot closely and to help people understand, you can lower your A1C without having to turn your life upside down, rip out everything in your fridge and, start over to a point where like you don't even recognize your life anymore. Now, some people would suggest that's exactly what you do. But for me, I've found ways into making small shifts and changes that have big impact. And I just add to it. Once I've kind of gotten one skill worked in and it's become a habit, then I add to that and I add to that. And over time, I've seen the results of that. And I want to provide that for others. So that's really where the show is going, guys. Like, I just want to provide you just straight up, real talk. This is what it is. This is what I've learned. Here's what's kind of going on out there. And here's some great perspectives and minds who can give you more knowledge and information. And then you take that and you apply it how you will. I'm not here to force any information on anybody. It's just, here's what I know and what I understand. And I'm putting it out there and I want to make sure it's reachable and attainable, especially for communities of color. Simply because nobody's really making the room or the space professionally for us to be there. It's happening. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not there, but it's so washed out that it's hard to find. I don't see people really going into marginalized communities and setting up testing sites to ensure that people can get their A1C checked, even if they don't have insurance. You know what I mean? Like, it's stuff like that. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to build, and that's what I want to bring. And I just feel like it's something that is absolutely needed. And even if right now the only thing that I can do is hold up a megaphone or a microphone and record it, and blast it at your own speakers and say, hey, this is something that we need. This is something you should learn. This is something you should pay attention to. Then I'll do that. And when I get to the growth that I can literally go to those communities and say, hey, totally free. Let's get your A1C tested. Then I want to do that, So that's kind of what you can expect. So where we go from here is I've already started to make some changes in the aesthetic and appeal of my Instagram feed. So you'll start to see that. My website is getting some updates. Not a full overhaul right now, just because, fun fact, I'm doing it myself. Part of the skills that I've picked up in, having a best friend who's worked in graphic design for a very long time, and just my general interest in coding and web design. I really love UI, UX design and just functionality of stuff and, a little bit of flashiness. But for the most part, I've taken all of these skills and I've been able to apply it to my own website. So when you're on my website, that's all me. I mean, there's a theme, and some tools that help me do it. But the concepts, I wireframed all that. But so, if you head to the website now, you're going to get met with a, hey, I'm dressing right now. I'll be out in a second, because I want everything with my brand to match the mission that I'm trying to bring, and that is your ultimate resource for all things for diabetics. And I'm going to make sure that it's going to factor in, mindset and mental health and varying perspectives and, varying nutritions, because it's all about finding what works for you. At the end of the day, that's what this journey is about. Get your mind right, do your research, find what works for you. And that's it. That's really all I got. So I really hope that this, this kind of 3-part series has been helpful, and just catching up with you guys, letting you know what's been going on with me, and what I'm trying to change, and, how this is kind of affecting me, and how this is shifting what I want to do for the world, because it is a journey. It is a battle, and there's definitely a big hill to climb. But I'm definitely here to say I'm ready to climb it. And to me, there is no turning back. I'm really in it for the long haul, and I hope you guys are too. So like I said, short and sweet. I'm doing good. Oh my God, I'm doing good on time. And I hope that you guys are excited about some of the kind of visual changes that are coming. I've worked really hard on it. I hope you like it. But after this episode, like, it's go time. You're going to start to really hear some great stories and perspectives. I'm going to bring some valuable information to you guys. And don't forget, every Thursday is when you can expect those new episodes to drop. So make sure that you are tuning in wherever you can find, podcast broadcasted. Subscribe, like, follow. I do load all of the episodes on YouTube as well. Don't think I forgot. Video is coming. Just let me work out this video editing situation, guys, because one woman show. Well, no, I lied. A one woman, one man show. There you go. Because shout out to my dad, who is hooking up all of the audio for this. So if you're hearing this nice, crispy sound, all these things, that is We Are 8 Studios doing what he does best. But yeah, it's going to be great. And I'm really excited to grow this brand with you guys, and to just continue to share, and, be a homie that you can lean on whenever you got questions or just want to vent or whatever. Because without community, then what are we? Right? Yeah. You feel me? Anyways, that's all I got, guys. I really hope that you have a great rest of your week. Hope you do something awesome this weekend. Take some time for yourself. Love on yourself, for real. Self-care is so important, guys. That's been like a huge message that I've gotten in the past week or so. And I'm really, really, really taking that to heart. So make sure, even if it's just 5 minutes, guys, seriously, self-care does not have to mean spending hours and hours and hours of your day, just focusing on you. Even if it's just 5 minutes, go for a walk, meditate, pray, draw, journal, just vibe out to your favorite music, sit down with no phones, no electronics, with some tea or your coffee, and just enjoy the moment. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is that makes you turn inward and feel at peace with yourself. It is so important, especially in these times, especially with this election coming up. I'm not going to sit here and play like it's not, something that's happening. It's definitely very important. We're in it for the long haul, guys. However this shakes out, we got to be ready, and we're only going to be ready for taking care of ourselves. All right? Until then, I'll catch you guys next Thursday. I'm really excited for you guys to hear what all I've got for you. But for now, we'll call it a day. Check it.